Have you ever noticed how some days you wake up already tired? Not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of everything unsaid, unseen, and unfinished. You haven't even stepped outside, yet your spirit feels crowded. You check your phone, and before the morning light fully enters the room, your peace has already been traded. A few messages here, a few scrolls there, a quiet surrender you didn't even feel happening. This is how energy is stolen, not by force, but by access. Most people imagine energy theft as something mystical, a curse or evil eye. But Ibn Arabi warned about a subtler form, the way the heart leaks through attention. The Sufis call it Sir al-Himma, the secret of focus. Wherever your attention goes, your essence follows. Every message you open, every complaint you absorb, every argument you entertain becomes a doorway where your spiritual current flows outward. And when too many doors remain open, the house of the heart begins to empty. You can feel it in the constant alertness, in the tension behind your eyes, in that quiet exhaustion that no sleep can fix. You may call it burnout, but Sufis call it ghafla, spiritual heedlessness, not a sin, but a sleep, the state where your energy is scattered across people, screens, and worries that do not belong to you. Ibn Arabi once wrote, "The heart is a lamp. When it burns for too many causes, its light becomes smoke." That smoke is what modern life feels like, full, yet faint, always present, yet never whole. You wonder why even peaceful moments don't recharge you anymore. You sit in silence, but the silence feels crowded. Because peace doesn't come from what's around you. It comes from what's no longer leaking through you. Think of how easily we give our energy away. A friend calls to vent, and you absorb their sadness as if it were your duty. A coworker drops their frustration into your lap, and you carry it long after they've forgotten. A loved one grows distant, and you start replaying every word, trying to fix what was never yours to repair. You think you're helping, but you're bleeding, slowly, politely, invisibly, and the world praises it. It tells you that being available makes you kind, that answering instantly means you care, that giving endlessly is the sign of a good heart. But Ibn Arabi would disagree. He said the good heart is not the one that gives without limit. It's the one that gives with awareness. For the unguarded heart, no matter how pure, will soon become exhausted, and exhaustion breeds resentment. Have you ever noticed how peace feels most fragile when you are around certain people? How some conversations feel like a heavy tax on your soul, while others leave you quietly glowing? That's not coincidence. That's energetic exchange, the unseen economy of attention. Every person, every word, every thought either nourishes or consumes. Sufis often compare this to water. When you pour from a vessel that's already empty, the few drops that remain become muddy. But when you fill your vessel first, through remembrance, through silence, through alignment, what overflows becomes clear, clean, sustaining. You can't give peace if you don't dwell in it. Ibn Arabi called awareness the first gate of sovereignty, the ability to notice where your energy flows before it's gone. So begin here. Observe what drains you without guilt. Notice the moments where your body tenses, your breath shortens, your spirit feels smaller. These are not coincidences. They are signs, divine reminders whispering, protect the trust of your soul. And maybe this is why you're here now, listening, watching, remembering, because something in you already knows the truth. You've been generous for too long. You've mistaken depletion for devotion. You've confused exhaustion with empathy. But you can reclaim it by awareness, by restraint, by learning when to give and when to guard. Because the theft you fear doesn't come from outside. It comes quietly, through every moment you forget that your energy, your focus, your time, your presence is sacred. So ask yourself, before we move further, who has access to your peace right now? And did you grant it consciously or by habit? Every soul has gates, not of wood or stone, but of attention. And every time you listen, respond, explain, or react, you open one of them. In the unseen realm of the heart, access is everything. It's how energy flows, how influence moves, how peace either stays or leaks. But because these gates are invisible, most people never realize they're open until they're emptied. Think about how often it happens in daily life. You wake to a message that instantly pulls you into someone else's storm. You answer out of habit, not choice. A coworker complains. You sympathize, though your own spirit is weary. A family member calls not to connect, but to unload. You say, "It's okay. I'll listen," because saying no feels like cruelty. Yet by the end of the day, your chest feels heavy and your silence feels thin. Ibn Arabi warned that the heart, when left unguarded, becomes the pasture of every passing thought. Every complaint, every drama, every piece of gossip that enters your mind leaves its footprint there. What you hear shapes what you hold. What you hold becomes what you radiate. Slowly, your calm begins to sound like their chaos. And the truth is, people rarely mean harm. They don't even realize they're taking. They just sense where the light is. Like travelers in the dark, they gather around your warmth to feel safe. But warmth, when not replenished, turns to smoke. The Sufis teach that compassion must be disciplined by wisdom, or it becomes self-erosion. True kindness has boundaries. Mercy must rest in awareness. The prophet said, "Part of perfection in faith is leaving what does not concern you." That's not coldness. That's divine design. To protect the current of your energy, you must know what truly belongs to you. Most of us mistake emotional accessibility for love. We think being constantly reachable means we're loyal, caring, spiritual. But love without discernment isn't virtue. It's leakage. Imagine a river with no banks. It doesn't nourish. It floods. Ask yourself, how many times have I poured from my cup until I was empty, yet no one even noticed the effort? How many times have I confused guilt with generosity? Every yes you utter without peace behind it becomes a silent contract, a permission slip for others to draw from your energy at will. And each time you answer when your soul says, "Not now," you train the world to forget your limits. The law of access is simple. Energy flows where permission lives. Not verbal permission, emotional permission. The person who always comforts, fixes, listens, explains, grants silent access. The one who stays quiet, grounded, selective, guards it. And guarding doesn't mean isolation. It means stewardship. The way a gardener guards sunlight, not hoarding it, but directing it wisely. The prophet balanced community and solitude. He walked among people, yet his energy remained anchored in remembrance. His calm wasn't passive, it was preserved. Ibn Arabi described this as hifz al-hudur, the preservation of presence. A spiritual boundary that keeps you in alignment with the real, al-haq, even when the world pulls at you. When you're truly present, Manipulation can't find you. Noise can't drain you because you're not scattered. You're centered. And maybe that's what modern exhaustion really is. Not just tiredness, but overexposure. You've let too many vibrations touch your spirit. Too many demands shape your peace. You've answered too many unearned invitations. But there's a quiet revolution that begins when you close the wrong gates, when you stop responding from guilt and start responding from awareness. Something shifts. The world won't collapse. It recalibrates. People who only valued your accessibility will fade. Those who respect your peace will draw closer. So before moving forward, pause and reflect. Who has unfiltered access to your time, your emotions, your silence? And are they making deposits or withdrawals? Because Ibn Arabi's warning isn't about others stealing your energy. It's about you forgetting that your energy was never theirs to take. It was a trust meant to be offered only where your soul expands, not where it shrinks. If you listen closely, the soul speaks before the body does. You can feel it in your chest when someone enters the room, that subtle tightening, that quiet unrest. It's not judgment, it's recognition. The heart knows who replenishes it and who quietly consumes it. Ibn Arabi wrote that every meeting between two souls is a transaction of light. Some leave you illuminated, others leave you dimmed. And in our world, where every connection feels like a demand, few of us notice the imbalance, the silent exchange where one gives and the other only takes. These are the people who drain you, not always with malice, not always with intent, but through patterns that feed on your availability. The Sufis teach that awareness, not anger, reveals them. There is the emotional borrower, the one who treats your peace like an open credit line. They call when they're anxious, cry when they're lost, unload their storms, and then vanish when the sun returns. You care deeply, so you listen again and again until your own heart begins to ache with emotions that were never yours to carry. You tell yourself it's empathy, but Ibn Arabi would call it attachment without discernment, a bond that drains because it's built on imbalance. Then there's the controller, the one who feeds not on your kindness, but on your reaction. They provoke subtly, a tone, a word, a sigh, and wait for the spark. When you defend, they absorb your energy like a sponge. Reaction is their nourishment, your silence, their famine. Sufi masters say, "He who knows your triggers owns your state." Every time you rise to the bait, you surrender the authority of your own calm. There's also the mirror manipulator. They sense your compassion and shape themselves around it. They know your need to help, your fear of conflict, your habit of peacekeeping. They mirror your empathy until you can't tell where their pain ends and yours begins. But mirrors don't love. They reflect. You're not seen, only used as an emotional surface for their reflection. And sometimes the one who drains you is not another person. It's a version of yourself, the fixer, the overgiver, the one who feels responsible for everyone's balance but their own. You mistake exhaustion for purpose because the world has always rewarded you for being available. You're afraid that if you stop, everything will fall apart. But what if the only thing falling apart is the illusion that you were ever meant to hold it all? Ibn Arabi warned, the heart is enslaved not by chains, but by habits. We are drained not because others are powerful, but because our patterns are predictable. The people who take from us, don't always need to ask. They rely on the script we keep repeating, the same apology, the same "it's okay," the same self-neglect wrapped in grace. But when you pause, truly pause, and refuse to perform the old role, something strange happens. They stumble. The dynamic falters because the energy that fed them has stopped flowing. They grow uneasy in your silence, searching for the reaction that no longer comes, and you realize the truth. It was never your anger they feared. It was your neutrality. The prophet said, "The strong one is not the one who defeats others, but the one who controls himself when angry." Strength in Sufism is not dominance, it's sovereignty. The calm that cannot be manipulated, the peace that doesn't require permission. Ask yourself, who in your life always leaves you lighter, and who leaves you quietly aching? Whose presence makes your breath slow, and whose makes it shallow? Because these sensations are not random. They're messages from the unseen. Energy recognizes truth before words can, and here lies Ibn Arabi's warning that those who steal your energy are not stealing it with malice, but with permission, with patterns you no longer question. With availability you never revoked. The next step isn't to resent them, it's to understand them and yourself. Because when you recognize the pattern, you can rewrite it. And the moment you stop feeding what drains you, you don't lose power. You return to it. Every draining relationship, no matter how painful, begins with a silent contract. One that says, "I will give more than I receive just to keep peace." You may not have signed it on paper, but your body remembers when it began. The moment you said yes while your heart whispered no. The moment you stayed to avoid guilt. The moment you mistook self-sacrifice for love. Ibn Arabi called this the veil of intention, when good deeds lose their purity because they are fueled by fear, not sincerity. You tell yourself you're being kind, patient, spiritual. But beneath that patience is a quiet terror, the fear of being unloved if you stop giving. And so the cycle begins. You become the one who fixes, absorbs, explains, forgives, the one who forgets themselves in the service of everyone else. The world praises you for it. You're so understanding. You're always there for everyone. You never complain. They call it virtue, but the Sufis would call it imbalance. Because true service flows from fullness, not emptiness. When you serve from depletion, you are not sharing light. You are burning yourself to keep others warm. Think of it like this. A candle that never rests in the dark cannot sustain its flame. Its wax shortens, its light flickers, its purpose weakens. That's what happens when your worth becomes tied to being useful. People stop seeing you as a soul. They see you as a function. You exist not for connection, but for consumption. And the tragedy is, you agreed to it, not consciously, but emotionally. Somewhere along the line, you learned that love must be earned. Maybe as a child you were praised for helping, for being the mature one, for smoothing over conflict. Maybe you found that the only way to stay safe was to stay needed. So you built a personality around that pattern and called it goodness. But Ibn Arabi's wisdom cuts deep here. Man hides behind what he offers and forgets the treasure of what he is. In other words, the very act that made you loved became the mask that hid you. You are not exhausted because people take too much. You are exhausted because you trained them to take without limit. In Sufi terms, This is the illusion of ownership, believing that your energy belongs to others, that your peace is negotiable. But everything you are, your presence, your compassion, your time, is amana, a trust from God. You are its guardian, not its sacrifice. The prophet taught, your body has a right over you, and so does your soul. When you constantly extend yourself beyond capacity, you violate both trusts. The heart begins to rebel quietly through anxiety, resentment, fatigue. That discomfort is not weakness. It is divine communication, a warning that the unseen agreement has expired. So what happens if you stop renewing it? If one day you choose silence over explanation, boundaries over burnout? At first, guilt will rise like smoke. You'll worry they'll think you've changed. And you have. But not into something colder, into something truer. Imagine a gardener tending every field except his own. His flowers wilt first, though his hands never stop moving. He thinks he's generous, but he's neglecting the very soil that sustains him. One day, when his well runs dry, he'll realize that service without self-nourishment is not holiness. It's self-erasure. The unseen agreement ends the moment you realize you never owed that much, that you are allowed to rest, to say no, to stop explaining, to let people be responsible for their own healing. You are not abandoning love, you are purifying it. Ask yourself, what have I been giving to keep a peace that only costs me? What roles have I been rehearsing just to remain accepted? Because every time you betray yourself to be understood, you reaffirm that old contract. And every time you honor your silence instead, you begin to write a new one between you and God, a contract of alignment, of awareness, of peace that doesn't require exhaustion. The Sufis never spoke of energy the way modern language does. They spoke of Barakah, a quiet radiance that flows through everything aligned with the divine. Unlike physical strength, Barakah can't be stored or faked. It increases with remembrance and fades with heedlessness. It's the invisible current that animates your peace, sharpens your clarity, and softens your heart. When Ibn Arabi wrote about the trust of the soul, he was speaking of this current. He said that the heart is a vessel, and God fills it in proportion to its stillness. Every distraction, every false attachment, every needless explanation pokes holes in that vessel. Energy doesn't vanish. It just leaks. That's why some people can pray for hours and feel drained, while others whisper one sincere remembrance and glow for days. It's not about quantity. It's about containment. In Sufi teaching, the human being is like a lamp. The flame is Ruh, the divine spirit, and the oil is Himma, the focused will. When your focus scatters, the flame flickers. When your will aligns with the real, Al-Haq, the flame steadies and brightens. So when people say, guard your energy, the Sufis would rephrase it, guard your Himma, protect what fuels your flame. Everything in creation operates under spiritual law, and energy is no exception. It obeys the divine names that govern balance. Ar-Razak, the provider. He replenishes what is spent in sincerity. The energy you give out of love for truth returns multiplied. But energy spent out of guilt, fear, or ego brings fatigue, because it moves against the current of providence. Al-Hakam, the wise. He orders all things with purpose. If a door closes, it is wisdom protecting you from depletion. If silence falls, it is not rejection, it's conservation. Wisdom doesn't waste power. where it won't grow. Al-Basar, the all-seeing. He witnesses every exchange of the heart. Even when no one notices your restraint, God does. Even when you say nothing, the act of not reacting is a form of worship. To remain unseen yet sincere is the highest preservation of Barakah. But how do you live this science practically? The Sufis offered 3 practices, simple but transformative. First, silence, samt. Speak only when words serve truth. Every unnecessary defense or explanation burns oil from the lamp of the heart. Ibn Arabi said, "What you waste in speech, you lose in light." Observe the moments when silence feels heavy. That's usually where your ego is trying to speak. Second, solitude, halwa. Not withdrawal from people, but periodic return to yourself. Sit in stillness, away from demands, and watch your thoughts settle. In that quiet, your energy realigns. The prophet retreated to the cave of Hira not to escape the world, but to receive it anew. Your solitude serves the same purpose, to recharge your barakah through presence. Third, remembrance, dhikr. Every breath is an opportunity to recall the source. When you mention His name, Allah, your vibration changes. The Sufis believed that remembrance is like polishing the mirror of the heart. When it shines, divine energy flows freely through you, unblocked by resentment or distraction. These are not rituals of escape. They're systems of balance. They teach that energy, like prayer, must circulate outward in compassion, inward in restoration. You cannot stay empty and expect radiance. You cannot live reactive and expect peace. Ask yourself, where have I been spending divine currency on what does not yield light? What conversations, habits, or environments make my soul feel poorer? And remember, not all fatigue is physical. Sometimes it's the heart reminding you that it has given too much without remembrance. The Sufi science of energy is really a science of attention. Wherever your awareness rests, your essence follows. So place it wisely, on truth, on prayer, on moments that expand rather than consume you. Because what you attend to is what you become. And when your attention aligns with the real, exhaustion turns into expansion. There is a moment between provocation and response, a small, sacred breath, where your entire destiny can change. Most people rush through it. They react, defend, explain, or retaliate. But the Sufis, especially Ibn Arabi, saw that breath as the gateway to mastery, the place where sovereignty begins. You've felt it before, when someone's tone sharpens, when a message stings, when silence feels like rejection. The body tightens, the pulse quickens, the ego rises. You want to speak, to clarify, to prove you were right. But in that instant, something deeper whispers, wait. That pause is not weakness, it's power returning home. The prophet taught, the strong one is not the one who wrestles, but the one who controls himself when angry. This control is not repression, it's awareness. The difference between reacting to noise and responding to truth. The art of pulling back is not about walking away from life. It's about stepping out of patterns that keep you drained. When you stop explaining to those committed to misunderstanding you, you're not being arrogant. You're conserving sacred energy. When you stop rushing to fix what isn't yours to fix, you're not being cold. You're practicing wisdom. The world will misread this silence. People who once fed on your reactions will grow uneasy. They'll call you distant, detached, different. And they're right, because silence rearranges the room. Without your constant explaining, they're left with their own echoes. Without your energy fueling their drama, the cycle breaks. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Silence in the presence of truth is more eloquent than speech." But he also warned that silence without understanding becomes pride. The Sufi path balances both, knowing when silence heals and when it hides. To master this art, you must first recognize why you react. Often, reaction is not about the present. It's an echo of an old wound. Someone dismisses you today, and your childhood ache awakens. Someone challenges you, and your old fear of rejection surfaces. Pulling back allows you to witness that pain instead of performing it. You feel it without becoming it. That's not avoidance. It's alchemy. This inner stillness is what the Sufis call sabr, patience, but not passive endurance. True sabr is strength under control, mercy with structure. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that time itself is on your side. When you stop trying to win moments, life begins to unfold on divine timing. There's a story in every Sufi circle. A seeker once complained to his master, "They insult me. They misunderstand me. They steal my peace." The master smiled and said, "Then stop handing it to them." The student paused, confused. "How?" The master replied, "By not reacting to what was never yours to manage." That's the essence of pulling back, remembering that peace is a trust, not a trophy. You don't need to defend it in every battle. You simply need to stop placing it in other people's hands. So how do you practice this in daily life? When you feel provoked, delay your response. Count your breath. Let silence do what words cannot. When someone demands explanation, ask yourself, would this clarify truth or just feed control? When chaos rises around you, remember that your silence is not emptiness. It's alignment. The Quran describes the servants of the Most Merciful as those who, when the ignorant address them, say, "Peace," not out of superiority, but because they refuse to invest light in darkness. Pulling back is not retreat. It's recalibration. It's choosing to preserve the divine current instead of scattering it. It's realizing that your reaction is the most expensive thing you own, and not everyone can afford it. Ask yourself now, how much of your exhaustion comes from battles that never required you? How often do you defend peace instead of embodying it? Ibn Arabi said, "The soul finds its voice in stillness." The art of pulling back is how you return to that stillness, not by withdrawing from life, but by stepping back into your own center, where nothing external can steal your energy again. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when silence no longer feels like loss. It feels like wealth. You stop chasing responses. You stop rushing to be understood. You stop over-explaining the purity of your intentions to people committed to misreading them. That's when something subtle begins to return, a quiet dignity that had been missing for years. This is what the Sufis call istirdad al-ruh, the return of the soul's energy. It's not mystical or abstract. It happens in small, deliberate acts of alignment. One less explanation, one more breath, one mindful no, one conscious pause before reacting. You start realizing that the energy you once scattered everywhere now pools quietly within you, stronger, clearer, steadier. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Every act of remembrance is a return of ownership. When you remember who you are, you begin to reclaim what you've given away, your peace, your time, your focus. These are not infinite resources. They are divine trusts, amana, given to you to protect, to to spend wisely, and to use in service of meaning, not noise. Reclaiming your energy doesn't mean building walls. It means learning discernment, the difference between generosity and leakage, between helping and enabling, between presence and performance. It means realizing that real compassion does not drain, it nourishes. If giving leaves you hollow, it's not love. It's fear wearing a kind face. In Sufi tradition, the prophet is described as the one whose silence taught, whose presence healed, and whose heart gave without depletion. That balance wasn't accidental, it was spiritual economy. He never spent his energy in arguments that dimmed the light. He gave deeply, but only where truth could grow. He walked away from noise, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Your own reclamation begins the same way, when you no longer measure your worth by your usefulness, when you stop explaining boundaries as apologies, when you stop allowing chaos to rent space in your sacred interior. The less you defend your peace, the more powerful it becomes. Think of your energy as currency. Every thought, every reaction, every conversation is a transaction. Some purchases are sacred: a moment of prayer, a word of kindness, a breath of gratitude. Others are wasteful: endless explanations, toxic cycles, unhealed arguments. The heart becomes impoverished when it invests in what yields no return. The Sufis taught that to reclaim your Barakah, you must close your unnecessary accounts, the ones that cost peace and give nothing back. This doesn't mean abandonment, it means awareness. You still serve, still love, still give, but now with wisdom, not compulsion. You give without losing yourself in the giving. And when that shift happens, something extraordinary unfolds. Your outer world may become smaller, but your inner world expands. Conversations grow fewer, but richer. Relationships grow quieter, but deeper. Time slows. Breath softens. You begin to feel that divine rhythm again, the pulse of life that was always there beneath the noise. Ibn Arabi said, "When you guard the gates of your heart, the real walks freely within." That is the essence of spiritual sovereignty, not control, but clarity. You no longer react out of fear or obligation. You act out of intention. You choose where your energy goes, and in that choosing, you become a mirror of divine balance, giving and receiving in harmony. Ask yourself, where have I been investing in chaos? What could flourish if I redirected that energy toward peace? Because every moment you reclaim your attention, you're not withdrawing from life, you're returning to it. You are re-entering your own soul after years of being scattered across distractions. And maybe that's Ibn Arabi's true warning, that energy theft isn't about others stealing from you, but about how easily you abandon yourself in the name of love, service, or belonging. The real work is not protection, it's remembrance. When you finally remember what you are, light, trust, divine echo, you stop spending yourself cheaply. You give from fullness, not fear. You rest without guilt. You speak only when it nourishes, and you walk through the world not drained, but radiant, because you have reclaimed the currency of your soul.